I shared a video with you where I showed you all of my studio lighting setups. Then I made individual videos detailing the uses and benefits of all but one of the types. Today I'll talk to you about the last type of lighting I have in my studio, my hardware store halogen work lamps. I purchased these guys from my local hardware store. I have two different types, but they're both halogen lights. They provide me with bare bones continuous light. I talked about the benefits of continuous light in my video on fluorescent continuous lights. But basically, the biggest benefit of continuous light is that you can see how your light is affecting your scene without ever taking a photo. As you move the lights around or as your subject moves, you immediately see the effects. Continuous lights are also good for video. That's actually why I initially purchased these lights, was to use them to light my videos. Now, I did say that these are bare bones. And I do mean bare bones. There isn't a lot going on here. There isn't much variability in the output, but the ways you can adjust them are by either turning one or both of the light heads on or off, by raising or lowering the light stands, or by adjusting the angle of the light heads, or by turning the light stands around. You can even also take them off of the light stands and set them on the ground. With traditional studio lights, you can often add modifiers so that you can change the character of the light or where the light is headed in your scene. However, these lights aren't built for modifiers, and they run very hot, so you really can't make any modifiers for them without causing a severe fire hazard. But that's okay, because all that adds up to harsh light with a sweet spot of edginess and creativity. What am I talking about? Harsh light? Isn't that something that we avoid in portraits? Isn't that why we invest in umbrellas and softboxes and such? Well, yeah. A lot of the time, we do want a nice soft light to beautify our photo subject. But that's not always the case. Sometimes harsh lighting can make a photo more edgy and interesting. And that's why I use these lights. Okay, so I mentioned a moment ago that you couldn't use modifiers with these. And I sort of told the truth. You can do a couple of things that achieve the same or at least a similar effect as you would get with some different modifiers. One thing you can do is bounce the light. If these guys are aimed at a white wall or the ceiling, the light will bounce off of it and soften as it makes its way back to the subject. That way, you can get that more diffused light that is flattering on the subject. Another thing I have done is put something in between my subject and the lights to act as a modifier. I used lace in one shoot. I hung some lace up in between me and the light, making sure that it was a good few feet in front of the light so that it didn't catch fire. The light filtered through the lace and created a pattern of light and shadow on me as the subject and on the wall behind me. So it's fun to play around with modifying these lights, but the real reason that I like using them is when I want a good, hard-edged look. Those times when I want to play with shadow and create something really unique. In this shoot in the garage, I moved the light heads around but didn't modify them at all. That way I got a harsh edge between light and shadow. I directed the light so the background didn't get illuminated. I used things around me, including myself, to create shadow. The end result was edgy and kind of badass. You can get some really cool looks with these lights, but let's talk about a few considerations when using them. They do run hot, like I mentioned before. Obviously, you'll want to be careful touching them when making any adjustments to their positioning, but they emanate heat too, so your subject is going to feel it. They will start sweating it out after a while, so I like to take a break every so often to cool down. Unless the sweating adds to the image. You need to be careful when moving around any type of studio lighting, but I'm extra careful with these. They can be hot if you've recently had them on, and they're a bit wobbly, especially as you increase the height. So be careful walking around them and where you lay down the power cord so you don't trip over it, and they're a bit heavy too. When I'm not using them, I like to lower them down as much as they go and wind the cord around them. You also have to wear gloves when you change the bulbs. You cannot touch the bulbs ever. One, because they're very hot, so you will burn yourself if they've been on recently. But also because even if the lights are cold, the oils from your hands will get on the bulbs, and then you run the risk of the bulbs actually exploding when you turn them on. Of course, there are considerations and even workarounds when using work lights in the studio. You're repurposing something that is meant to be used on a work site, but they're worth it. Here's why. Reason number one, cost and availability. These lights are much less expensive than your standard studio lighting. I got my lights for around $40 each. Plus, you can head over to your local hardware store and have them home and ready to go in no time at all. Reason number two, simplicity and creativity. These lights are simple. They are on or off. And while you can, move them around a bit and maybe turn off one of the light heads on each stand, there really isn't a whole lot to monkey with. They free you up to use your creativity. Now, I showed you all a bunch of photos in this video. Some of them are from past shoots. Some are from a shoot that I just did. You can find a sample photo from that most recent shoot on snapchick.com. I also share some camera settings for the photo. You can find a link to the post in the description of this video. For my VIPs, I share an entire gallery of images from the shoot. Also, VIPs, make sure to watch the VIP show this week to see some behind-the-scenes footage and hear me talk more about that shoot.